Hey, everybody, I am Tom Haberstroh, and you're watching our new podcast. It's The Big Number with Dan Devine, which drops every Thursday right here at Yahoo Sports. What's up, Dan?
Tom, I got my sweaters on because it's fall time officially here in New York City. I've got the whole city behind me. I've got you in front of me. Let's get some numbers.
We've got 5 of them today. We're going to go.
That's a big number. It's a bigger number than usual for us.
It is, because it's one of these topics that I feel like we need to hit now, because people aren't going to understand how good this player is or this team is until we put some numbers behind it, before we frame this whole entire last 10 years in the NBA around this one big number and 4 additional numbers, which we'll hit later in the show. So are you ready for the first number, which is the biggest number? It is the big number. You ready, Dan?
I am, but I got to say, if you're saying people are not going to understand how good this player is, how important this team is until we put the number to it, this has to be some really some hipster stuff, some a digging in the crates, find the ninth man, and here's why this guy's going to ascend, right?
I would say maybe a guy who was underrated his entire career and might have had an entire campaign about how underrated he was coming into the league. So maybe in a way, it is about the ninth man because he somehow was not a top 5 pick. You ready for the big number? I've got it for you. This week's big number is 124.2. That is the Golden State Warriors offensive rating when Stephen Curry is on the floor, which I can't believe this. In the year 2024, Stephen Curry at age 36 is still delivering an on-court offensive rating that is top 5 in the NBA. We know Nikola Jokic, unbelievable offensive player. What he's doing in Denver is outstanding. He's number 1 on the list. Then you got Jaylen Brown and Christian Brown, by virtue of being with Nikola Jokic most of the time on the floor. And then number 4 is Stephen Curry. It is absurd. It is absurd that Stephen Curry at age 36 is still leading a top 3 offense in the NBA just by virtue of being out there. He is this gravitational pull by which everybody on the floor has to pay attention to. And this is the 6th time that he has led a top 3 offense in the NBA. He has multiple times a scoring title. He's multiple times been the number 1 offense in the NBA or led the number 1 offense in the NBA. And the only guy that I think can threaten that kind of dominance on one end of the floor in my lifetime is Michael Jordan. I am sitting here right now, Dan Devine, ready to say that this year has solidified my belief that Stephen Curry is the greatest offensive player in the NBA since Michael Jordan. Better than KD, better than LeBron James. I'm not saying that he's more durable than LeBron or better at defense than LeBron or KD. I'm sitting here saying offensively, there's no one better than Stephen Curry, and he's still doing it at age 36 for this one reason. He is terrifying on the ball and off the ball. The way the Warriors are leveraging Steph Curry this season and maximizing his window right now is outrageous. Like Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins, Moses Moody, Kevon Looney, they're all there to worship at the altar of Stephen Curry and his greatness. He is the son. He is the one who knocks. He is the guy that is, when you see the marionette and you're like, who's pulling the strings? It's Steph. There's 9 other players on the floor and he is pulling those strings constantly. A couple years ago, Derek White went on the JJ Redick podcast and was asked about what's it like guarding Steph in the NBA Finals. He said it is 48 minutes of constant paranoia. Okay. Mikal Bridges was asked, okay, LeBron, KD, Steph, who's harder to guard? Without hesitation, Dan, he said it was Steph because it is exhausting. He is more lethal without the ball than on the ball. The guy is walking top 3, top whatever you want to say, offense in the NBA. I think Stephen Curry is the greatest offensive player since Michael Jordan, and that's the reason why they are still title contenders in the year 2024. I'm still in awe of what he's been doing this season. Dan, We're going to bring 4 numbers later in the program, but I wanted to hear your response to my take that he is the greatest on that end of the floor since Michael.
So, well, first off, I just want to say I'm insulted that you ask, about marionettes. Of course I know about marionettes, Tom. You know this about me. We've talked about marionettes an awful lot. Who pulls the strings? Who is the puppet master? We've talked about it literally and figuratively in our world. You don't got to bring that in front of the people like that. Let's take care of that business behind closed doors.
I apologize.
I am. Oh, you should. Then thank you, and your apologies accepted. Moving along, I am here maybe as a basic box score person to ask you how this wouldn't be LeBron James. I'm looking for the explanation as to why the best offensive player since Michael Jordan would not be the guy who has scored more points than anybody else in NBA history, has scored about 17,000 more points than Stephen Curry, has dished about 5,000 more assists than Stephen Curry, with a higher career assist rate and lower career turnover rate, basically doubles up Steph in offensive win shares, and is like 6 inches taller and 65 pounds heavier, so he can be a post-up threat, a screen and roll dive threat, has more ways to, athleticism explosively, even at age 39, to be a lob threat. Like, there's more ways he can score and create offense to me in my brain. So I look at the statistical resume, it's like the stacking, and I think about the ways in which LeBron James can impact the floor. And I wonder if we are maybe shortchanging that at the altar of elevating efficiency.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Talk to me about where LeBron slots into that thought process for you.
J.R. Smith, noted LeBron teammate, was like, Steph is
J.R. Smith noted a lot of stuff. There's lots of things that J.R. Smith is notable for, but he had also one of them, LeBron James teammate. Yes.
Not just a meme of LeBron looking at J.R. like, what are you doing?
That's right.
J.R. Smith once said that Steph Curry guarding him almost killed Matthew Dellavedova in the NBA Finals 2025. Nearly died. He's like, dude, that guy had to go to the hospital after guarding Stephen Curry because of that 48 minutes of constant paranoia. It is this thing. De'Aaron Fox referred to this after the Sacramento series a couple years back. He's like, that J.R. Smith clip of when he's talking about how Steph Curry almost killed Matthew Dellavedova in the finals? It's real. It's real. The fact that the Warriors have been the number 1 offense in the NBA 3 times under Steph Curry. LeBron James has never had the best offense in the NBA in his NBA career.
Feels crazy that that's true.
Here's another fact. In the Lakers era, despite LeBron putting up these numbers individually, the Lakers have been more often a bottom 10 offense than they have been a top 10 offense. Okay? This is not to diminish LeBron James's talents, okay? I think he's one of, if not the greatest player of all time. But offensively, the only thing that is holding Stephen Curry back from achieving some of the things that LeBron James has had is defensively, he's not 6'8", size of Karl Malone, and has that kind of ability physically. And secondly, he doesn't have the durability. So those stats that you mentioned, the cumulative stats of how many points he scored, how many assists he had, a lot of it has to do with the fact that LeBron James has never been hurt, ever, right? Stephen Curry, when he's on the floor, you have to be constantly worried about a 30-foot layup. The math says that when Stephen Curry takes a three-pointer, he's shooting 43% from downtown this year. That means equivalent of a 65% two. Just by virtue of being off the ball, on the ball, he is always a 30-foot layup waiting to happen. And that has warped our understanding of defense. And that is why he is the marionette who pulls the strings of the 9 other players on the floor. He is the reason why he might not have the same number of assists as LeBron, but when the Warriors have him on the floor, their assist rate skyrockets. I think in like 5 years, we're going to have a stat called gravity assists. You watched the other night against Dallas. There was a play off the ball in the closing minutes where Moses Moody and Steph were having an off-ball action with Draymond. Draymond had the ball. And Luka doubled Steph in that action. And Moses Moody was like, I'm just going to go cut to the basket for a wide open layup. He dunked the ball, and Draymond got the assist, but it was all about Steph. And he doesn't get an assist there, but he creates more assists, more open baskets than anybody. And I think, look at Buddy Hield, his stats. This year, 79% effective field goal percentage with Steph on the floor, 58 when he's off the floor. Steph Curry with Anthony Melton on the floor. Melton is shooting 67% effective field goal percentage versus 43% when he's off the floor playing without Steph. Constantly, this is a common denominator. Steph Curry is that guy. Jokic can be there. I think Jokic has a potential, but KD, LeBron, they're not more lethal without the ball than they are with the ball. And Steph with the ball is pretty lethal.
The off-ball component is a really great point because of it points to, and it's a different way of getting at the ways in which Steph revolutionized the game, right? Like we talk so frequently about the expansion of the floor toward, or the offensive scoring area toward half court because he was pulling up from deeper, more readily, more quickly than anybody who had anyone previous to him, and at a higher efficiency when he took those shots, made more of them, took them more often, took them from further away, and it just warped geometry. He has that warping impact inside the arc or on the sides of the floor too, by virtue of, as you're saying, like he comes off an off-ball screen, he's getting blitzed by two guys, that leaves an open roller to the rim. I'll always remember, I forget which I love that sort of, I'll always remember, I forget which, but it was one of the Warriors-Cavs finals, and it was during the KD era, and the Warriors were out on the fast break. Kevin Durant is running straight down the middle of the floor. He's dribbling with the ball at the rim. Steph Curry is running the wing to the side. Two defenders go to Stephen Curry on the wing instead of getting in front of Kevin Durant to dunk.
That's paranoia. Right there is paranoia. And he lives in everybody's rent-free in their head as long as he's on the floor. That's crazy. KD coming down the lane, Dan.
Yeah, and it makes me think of basketball writer, journalist Jared Wade, a friend of the program from way back. The way he described it when they were playing together was beautiful to me. KD will put 8 points on you every quarter forever in his sleep. And everybody agrees, like Kevin Durant, smoothest scorer ever, maybe the most natural scorer of all time. Steph in under 5 minutes will have you questioning the reason you ever decided to play basketball because he so fundamentally changes the nature of the discussion and what you have to be aware of and defend against. And I suppose it is reasonable to say that difference is greater in some capacity than LeBron kind of like perfecting the versions of this sort of scorer or offensive player we've seen before, where it's like taking so much of the Jordan archetype and the Magic Johnson archetype and melding them together and then making that a consistent or a constant for 22 years. I think I can understand the point. I think you are probably going to have a fair amount of people saying to you, like, this is maybe a fundamental misunderstanding of what greatness constitutes, but that's also kind of what makes adjectives interesting, is we can kind of apply them to our own definitions the way we want to.
Yeah, I think Steph is new in ways that we could not have foreseen. A guy who's 6'3" dominate offensively, but we have never seen someone that skilled with handle and also the basketball IQ. He like directs the offense. Is like, I don't need the ball, but I've got so many people paying attention to me. Draymond hit Wiggins and then hit Moody, and it's all because of Steph. And as much as LeBron and KD and Jokic and Kobe are amazing on-ball talents, no one holds a candle off-ball to Stephen Curry. And that 48 minutes of constant paranoia is the reason why the Warriors are where they are, why the dynasty has happened, why Steve Kerr is considered one of the greatest head coaches. He is doing a great job of putting the pieces around Steph in ways that maximizes Steph. Finally, it's not about this, like, as good as Clay was the other night. It's not about Clay or his legacy. You're trying to soothe that fractured relationship. Now it's all about Steph. And that's why they're title contenders in our book. I think they've been title contenders ever since they reloaded with high basketball IQ guys in the offseason. And they are doing things this year that we're going to talk about here in our next segment. We've got 4 more numbers for you that we're going to unpack and talk about why the Warriors are legit title contenders with this, Steph, right after the break. Okay, so Steph Curry is the sun by which all the other planets revolve around, but there are other pieces to this puzzle. There are other things that we should talk about with the Warriors being 9-2 and coming off to this amazing start. Dan, you've got some little numbers here. We got the big number up top, 124.2, but where do you want to go here why this Steph Curry is being leveraged to becoming a title contender in 2024?
The first number I've got for you is 40. 40% is what opponents are shooting when Draymond Green is the closest defender to them, according to NBA.com, which would be his lowest defensive field goal percentage mark since 2015-16. As much as the Warriors dynasty and all of the relevant Warriors teams have been built on what Stephen Curry does in terms of changing and fueling that offense, as you mentioned, the rising tide that lifts all boats there, Draymond Green has been that for this team on the defensive end of the court. And I think it is reasonable to say, I mean, the Warriors, I believe, are second in defensive efficiency as we enter Thursday's games. I think it is reasonable to say Draymond is playing as well on that end this year as he has in the last several years and is a huge driving factor there. One of 8 players in the NBA who's got 50 assists, 25 deflections, 10 blocks, and 10 steals. They take fewer shots. Opponents take fewer shots at the rim when Draymond's in the game. They shoot worse at the rim when he's in the game. He's also covering a ton of ground. I think you're getting like an all-world version of Draymond Green to start the season, which is a huge reason why Golden State's gotten off to this great start.
100%. What he has done this season, dialing back the clock in the same way that Steph Curry is dialing back the clock. Draymond Green at 34 years old is doing things that we were seeing prime Draymond do. And the way that he blows up everything you want to do, he knows your offense better than you do. His cerebral attack to the game is maybe the greatest of all time defensively. He's just not as tall as anyone, as everybody else. All the defensive player of the year candidates we've seen historically typically been way bigger than Draymond Green. But his wingspan and his brains blow. There's so many times that Dallas wanted to throw a lob or OKC, you name it this season, and he blows it up with he reads the passer's eyes. He knows what they want to do, where they want to go. And the way he conducts the orchestra of the Warriors defense is still at an elite level. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's like, does Steph reach the same heights that he has in terms of the championships, in terms of the MVPs without Draymond? I don't know. Same way that Michael without Scotty, maybe it's peanut butter and jelly for a lot of these guys.
Right.
They maximize each other. Draymond has been outrageous this year. And I'm glad you brought that up because it's just the way that he knows the offense, how to leverage Stephen Curry's gravity offensively is a big reason why they've been able to reach those heights. So defensively, he's been outstanding. 40%. Like those are layups. Those are normally dunks and layups, and he is blowing them up constantly. He's been great, and I hope they both stay healthy so we can watch this the entire season. What's another number for you?
99, which is both Wayne Gretzky's number and also the percentile that Andrew Wiggins is in the B-Ball Index's metric, perimeter isolation defense. That is, among rotation wings, a top 5 number. It's the only guys like Davion Mitchell, Dyson Daniels, who's been an absolute monster at the beginning of the season, and Bilal Coulibaly, who's the best reason to watch the Washington Wizards right now. This is even though Andrew Wiggins has been taking on like basically an all-NBA team in terms of his frequent matchups. Luka, Jason Tatum, James Harden, SGA, Donovan Mitchell, whoever that guy is the Warriors are playing, he is the one to take that assignment, which throws me back to the 2021-22 season when the best version of Wiggins we've seen, period, was not a number 1 pick 20-point scorer, right? It was not, he wasn't a 50% three-point shooter. He wasn't shooting 80% at the rim. It was lock up the other team's best dude, crash the glass like hell, and be a fourth option. And Wiggins, the last couple of years, for personal reasons, in terms of his health, like in terms of this is all around game sort of shaking a little bit, he wasn't able to be at that level. During the 2021-22 playoffs, when they ran through Dallas in the Western Conference Finals, when they went through the Celtics, he was arguably the second best player on that team. He's maybe not quite at that level, but in terms of, I'm going to go lock up the other team's best dude and make his life miserable for the next 48 minutes, he seems like he's back there. And if that's true, the Warriors have a pretty important weapon to be able to throw at some of the other teams they're going to have to deal with out West.
His offensive rebounding has been essential. His shot making, his ability to get to the free throw line. He's looking like, at times the best version of himself. Another guy, by the way, Dan, that saw their game get raised to another level when playing with Steph Curry. You look at Otto Porter. You look at Sean Livingston. You look at Gary Payton II. KD has always been that guy, but also they won a championship with KD. So many times players come into the program, into the Steph orbit, right? And then becomes such a better, more efficient, smarter, just a better, all well-rounded player. And a lot of it is unlocked by Steph Curry. But Steph Curry needs those guys. He needs offensive rebounders to clean up, because as much as 43% is great, it also means 57% of the time there's an offensive rebound to be had.
Right.
So layups go in more often, but they're also, opportunities for offensive rebounding on 3-point shots that you need Draymond's, you need Kevon Loon. Loon Dog has been awesome this year in ways that Wiggins has too. So hats off to Andrew Wiggins, a good bounce back year from him. Another number? You got another?
How about 29.1? That's how many minutes per game Stephen Curry is averaging through the first 11 games of the season, which leads the Warriors and is, by my calculations, pretty low. It's south of 30. The only team in the NBA where their leading minutes getter is below 30 points, which, as you note here in our rundown, feels pretty Spursy, like the version of the Spurs that was the latter year Tim Duncan Spurs. Yeah. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
All right. So in 2014, Kawhi Leonard's the finals MVP. They beat the Miami Heat in the finals. And I think the story for me was how they preserved Tim Duncan, 37-year-old Tim Duncan, and 31-year-old Tony Parker. These older cats were like, yo, we can't play 36 minutes a night and still be able to be at our best in the finals. And Pop kept their minutes below 30 minutes a night. First team ever, I believe, is the case with the San Antonio Spurs in 2014. And you know who's a big Pop fan? Steve Kerr.
Yeah. I'm guessing that Mike Dunleavy Jr., when he took over the personnel responsibilities with the Warriors, was looking at it and saying, we have to, in moving off of Klay Thompson, we've got to be able to break that salary figure up into multiple guys to give us the bodies to be able to make that kind of plan work. And so far, so good, man. Brandon Pajemski, Buddy Hield, Jonathan Kuminga, for all the Sturm and Drang about, is he a starter? Is he the next star? Is he whatever? Bringing him off the bench now, playing about 24 minutes a game, and you're getting the best versions of him on and on down the line. DeAnthony Melton, Kyle Anderson has been awesome for this team to start. You have all these different types of pieces that you can use and mix and match in different styles of lineups. You can say we're going to run different kinds of defensive strategies. We're going to start trapping more often. We can sort of switch to blitz. We can do all these different sorts of things. Then whatever we want to do to try to make you play left-handed, we've got guys we can do that with now. Also just across the board, length, athleticism, size, wingspan. This is it has gone from a roster that was maybe at different points sort of a little bit slower, a little bit smaller. Now there's length and athleticism everywhere. And when you are creating the kind of deflections and steals that they are, you're getting out in transition, and that gets the machine rolling. All of a sudden, Stephen Curry's running to the wing or Buddy Hield's running to the corner. You're creating that panic that you were talking about. And I think you can play that way when you've got more dudes who can play. And the Warriors right now are running a dozen deep pretty much every night. And it's certainly, I think it's providing both that rest for Steph and sort of the older guys, and also is throwing waves of defenders and of transition scorers at dudes at opposing teams, leaving them catching their breath. Maybe Steve Kerr kind of caught a lesson from Team USA and the way they were able to overwhelm teams with their depth. Then again, maybe it's also just going back to the heyday of strength and numbers. Either way, certainly seems to be working so far for Golden State.
You don't think other teams would want their superstar to be playing 29 minutes a game? You look at KD was averaging a league high 39 minutes per game before he got hurt. Giannis is averaging 36 minutes per game. LeBron is averaging 36 minutes per game. I think the Spurs were brilliant to make sure that those guys are fresh for the postseason, but it's also about roster construction. And Mike Dunleavy Jr. has done an excellent job building this roster to preserve that sun by which all of those planets revolve around. Last one here, the last number of our 5-pack. Hit me with it, Dan.
11.02. That is the Warriors' SRS, stands for Simple Rating System, according to basketballreference.com. It's a team rating that takes into account teams' average point differential and their strength of schedule. That is a very big number for being only 11.02, and the reason why is this. Heading into this season, only 11 teams in NBA history had an SRS over 10, so one below. 8 of those 11 teams won the NBA championship. That's the 71 Bucks, the 72 Lakers, 3 different iterations of the MJ Bulls, 2 iterations of the Steph Warriors, and last year's Celtics. A 9th team, the 2016 Warriors, got to the finals and before losing. So 9 of the 11 teams that have been above an SRS of 10 have made the championship round. Thus far this season, there are only 2 teams that have an SRS above 10. We've just told you the Warriors are one. Tom Haberstroh, can you guess the other?
I can't. Who is it?
Who's your favorite to come out of the, as we have discussed here on the big number?
For the entire NBA, I believe it was the Dobermans. Is that the basketball reference?
Oh. That's exactly right. The Oklahoma City Thunder, Tom Haberstroh's fighting Dobermans, are the only other team in the NBA with an SRS above 10. So one of those teams we've said on this very program is the favorite to represent to come out and win the NBA Finals. Mm-hmm. The other one is the one we're talking about right now. So if that doesn't make you a title contender, I don't know what does.
They've done it on big opportunities against OKC, against Dallas. They haven't had a cupcake schedule, which, if you're in the Eastern Conference, chances are you've had a cupcake schedule. They did drop it a game to the Cavs, by the way. So Cavs are still coming, but the Golden State Warriors, absolutely a title contender. When you look at what you want out of a team, it's top 5 on both ends of the floor is what you typically want as a head coach. When you go into the playoffs, you want to be elite on both ends of the floor. It's very hard to make up for that. One side of the floor just isn't elite. It puts so much pressure on that other side to be hitting their shots or to be defending like maniacs. The Warriors are balanced in that sense, top 5 on both ends of the floor. I think they're title contenders, and I do think they've got another level to go. Like, Kuminga has been good, not elite. Podziemski is shooting like 8% from downtown, like 35% from the floor. He's going to be better. And I think by this depth thing, if at the All-Star break or around the trade deadline, they decide, hey, we're going to go and get a star, they have the assets to do that. And I think that in another way makes them even more of a title contender is that they have a swing factor that other teams don't, that they can upgrade using that depth and young players in the 2 timelines things. The fruit is ripening. And I think other teams might be like, hey, I want Moses Moody on my team. Look at Podziemski. Look at Kuminga and how they're playing. I want those guys on my team. And then suddenly you wake up one morning and Steph's playing with Giannis Antetokounmpo. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
Whoa. Listen, there's certainly room to dream big. And the Warriors, maybe this time a few months ago, or maybe this time last year, we weren't thinking about big dreams like that because it was like, well, with an older Steph and an older Draymond and these young guys sort of still maybe not panning out, could they make a deal like that? Or would they be close enough even if they did to get over the top? The way the Warriors have played so far gives you the reason to believe adding is a good idea. It's not just throwing good money after bad. It's maximizing this window. And the reason the window is even open at all is because of the big number of 124.2, the offensive rating with Stephen Curry on the floor.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Greatest offensive player since Michael Jordan, in my book, Stephen Curry. Hashtag Steph better. Coming up after the break, we're going to get into some over-unders, check the scoreboard, and set some new over-unders revolving around the Golden State Warriors. Right after this. All right, one thing that we've done every week is gamifying this podcast. We love gamifying everything. I'm the guy who started a Top Chef recap podcast by drafting fantasy teams with Kevin Arnovitz. I love gamifying any sort of coverage. Over-unders Dan, I've maintained my lead. It's 8-4 this season. We did some 3-point rates for centers. We did the Russell Westbrook. We did OKC. So far, it's 8-4, but it's a very fragile lead. And I'm gonna give you the opportunity to make up some ground with 3 new over-unders this week based on the Warriors. You ready?
I'm ready, and I'm coming for you, Tom. Let's go. I was about to curse. Okay. That's not nice. I'm in an office. I'm in a place of business. Let's go.
Okay. I want you to keep barking. Just like fire yourself
every once in a while.
Please.
I'm going to try to remember that in future episodes and just sort of spring it on you and surprise you.
First one, Stephen Curry, 30 minutes per game this season. You know, he's at 29 right now. The Warriors are still pretty deep. Can they maintain that kind of Spursy 2014 Tim Duncan season by keeping him under 30 minutes per game? I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to go over on this one. I think a little of this is preserving that ankle injury and making sure that he's not overdoing it in the early season, but I do think that he is going to creep up over 30 eventually this season, maybe around like 30.2. That's what I'll go with. Dan, over under 30 minutes per game for Stephen Curry this year.
Do you get like an extra bonus if you nail 30.2 on the nose? Like, does that like vault you up into the 2x status?
We're going to have to talk to our producer, John. Maybe he's going to have to be the arbiter of this. I get an extra over under a 0.5 little bonus on the scoreboard, maybe.
I like that idea. I mean, I hate that idea because that means that your lead is going to advance even further. I hate that even more because I am inclined to agree with you on this one. I'm going to go over here too. Steph has played more than 30 minutes per game in every season where he's played more than 26 games. So he's had 2 seasons ended prematurely due to injury. Every other one, he has gone over 30 minutes. He was just under 33 last year. So there's still some wiggle room for him to like get preserved, knock a couple minutes off a game while still getting over 30. So, and at some point also like Steve Kerr is not going to run 12 deep all year. And if you're going to give some players more minutes, it's a pretty good idea to give number 30 more minutes. So number 30, over 30, let's go over on it.
Okay, I'm right there with you. I hate that we agree because I can't make up more ground here and run up the score. Okay. Steph Curry on-court rating. The big number was 124.2. We're 11 games in on the Warriors. This is a guy that has been right around 120 on-court rating for his career, around there. But can he maintain just a little bit below of what he's at right now with 124? I'm going to put the line at 120. Do you think that he is going to be over or under? I am actually going to take the over here, Dan.
See, I'm trying to have, there's the game theory component of like, I've got to start going other ways than you, that if you're wrong, I'm right, and I make up the lead. But also I've been doing that and just getting further and further into the hole. I actually like the over on this too. I was about to slam the under just because that's a high bar to clear, and one that Steph has only cleared twice, both in the seasons when Kevin Durant was on his team. So like they were the greatest offense ever. And that's, you jump over that bar and that kind of team, and he has never done it besides that. However, this is an era of optimized efficiency. We've talked about it a ton, and there's more threes, more dunks, more mid-range, fewer mid-range shots, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And last season, 25 players topped 120 as an on-court offensive rating. And so far this season, 27 are on pace to do it. So it's not like an insurmountable thing to get to. And he's already 4 points clear of that, and the offense looks great. I think I got to go over on it, even though, again, and it's getting disgusting how frequently we're agreeing at this point. I might have to just become a contrarian, even if it puts me further in the hole.
Last 10 years, he's an average on-court rating of 118. That's insane. The league average scoring rate is like probably over the last decade, like 108, and he's at 118 consistently when he's on the floor. The on-court, off-court stuff, Jokic is probably a god. He is the gold standard of this. Part of that is because just they've had a dumpster behind him for a long time in Denver. It just hasn't, like, the bench behind Jokic has been atrocious. Can't really say the same thing with Steph Curry when you got Clay and KD and Draymond on the same team. But I would say over on this, I think Steph actually himself, a little careless with the ball sometimes. He tends to do that. That's kind of the thorn in his side throughout his career. 3.6 turnovers per game. Cleans that up. It's going to be a lot easier for him to get over that 120. Last one here, and then we'll get you out. 2.5. That is the over-under for rounds in the playoffs for the Golden State Warriors. If we believe that they are true title contenders, we kind of have to put our thumb on the scale here. We have to write it in blood. Do you think that they're going to be in the conference finals or better this year? I say yes. I think it's going to be them or the Thunder. Hopefully Chet Holmgren comes back this season and is willing to do the walling off the paint that he is so good at after that horrific injury, fracturing his hip. I think the Warriors can do it. I'm taking the over on the Warriors 2.5 rounds in the playoffs.
I did not agree to write anything in blood. I want to make that extremely clear. If any authorities are watching our episode today on YouTube, following along in their podcatcher of choice, no blood spilled on my account. And if any has, please check. There's a lot of people outside the studio here. We can the list of suspects, round them all up.
What kind of dedication do you have to this podcast that you're not willing to shed a little blood out here?
I mean, I've always been a coward, Tom, and that's something that you should know about me if you haven't already learned it. But speaking of cowardice, I am again going to agree with you as opposed to going against you on your own show that you're so kind to let me co-host. It's not, I don't have a fancy argument here. It's no sort of, this is the style of play that they've got, the balance they've got on both ends of the floor, the depth that they play with, the variety of options that Steve Kerr has to mix and match, the just like gargantuan amount of big game experience that Stephen Curry, Draymond Green, and Steve Kerr have, the institutional memory of ways to, like, every problem they've faced and every way to solve it. I think that gives them a leg up in most early round series. I think if they, barring a dramatic injury to Steph or Draymond, they are probably going to be in position to have a higher seed, home court in at least one of the rounds. That gets you one way, one step there. And I just love the way this team and this style matches up with other teams. I mean, Jokic is obviously like the nuclear bomb that you have to deal with, but the Warriors' ability to spread the floor, make him defend in space, make the rest of the team compensate, gives them a sort of styles make fights edge to me. I like it. I think they match up really well with pretty much anybody they're going to face. And, the betting against Stephen Curry seems like a fool's errand. So let's go with the over. I'm going to shrink back in the corner cowardly. And my best case scenario here is that I keep pace with you. But, Tom Haberstroh's a pretty smart guy. Maybe joining him is not such a bad idea.
DeAndre Ayton's almost hitting more than 1.5 threes, or taking more than 1.5 threes. So you're going to make up some ground here, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's definitely coming. The dominating avalanche, the 3-point monsoon is coming for us all.
Dan, you're not a coward. You're just someone that understands that when I'm right, I'm right. You can't zig when zigging's the right call, or you can't zag when zigging's the right call. I'm gonna butcher that analogy. I'm sorry, Dan. I'm not as good of a linguist as you are.
That's all right. As long as we're butchering analogies and not literally me to pay my debts in blood or whatever it was we were talking about earlier.
All right. Well, I gotta put this in blood here. Thank you to our producers, John and Emmy, and the entire team that works behind the scenes on this podcast. That is gonna do it for us today. Please subscribe to The Big Number wherever you listen to this podcast or watch this YouTube. Make sure you smash that subscribe button. Leave us a review. Give us a rating. We'll be back next week. What?
Just 5 stars, everybody. Come on. Yeah. 5. That's a big number. 5
We gave you
stars.
5 stats today. 1 star for every stat. That's math.
It's basic math, guys. 1 stat for each star. Let's do it.
We'll be back next week with another episode of The Big Number. We'll unpack some more numbers for you to learn more about the NBA and blow your mind so you can tell all your buddies about it. But until then,